Hey guys, thanks for hanging out with me today. Got a project to do on my RV today. I'm going to replace the wheel seals on all four wheels on my RV and also repack the bearings, clean the bearings, inspect them for heat marks, any scratches, re-grease them, and put them back in and put everything back together again. So, anyway, thanks for watching. Please subscribe, hit the like button. But noticed I've been out camping this summer, and because of the COVID, it seems like a lot of people buying RVs don't quite know what they're getting into. And for your old timers that are watching this right now, you're probably shaking your head, yes, yes, yes. When you buy an RV, everything's wonderful. Throw the kids in, take off. And first thing I've noticed, a lot of people have never pulled a trailer before and don't know what they're doing and haven't taken any classes or any training or anything like that. And all of a sudden they're in an F-150 or 250 and they're heading up the hill and pulling a 35-foot trailer that weighs 8,000 pounds. So notice a lot of mistakes, a lot of safety concerns, and I'll cover that too in the video and show you some maintenance things that I typically do. But anyway, that's what's going to be in the video. Again, thanks for watching. And behind me is the 1928-29 Ford Model A truck that I built. Watch one of my other YouTubes. Go down to my playlist. I have solar projects. I have all kind of cool stuff. That's why I called it Bill's Cool Projects. But anyway, made a custom frame for it to my design. Took a cab off of a 29 that I found rotted away in a lady's backyard in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So I chopped it, stretched it, made a steel roof for it. It's got a 32 grill shell, steel roof now, and a 31 wide bed on the back. And it's got a Cummins turbo diesel in it with an Allison transmission, so you can't beat it. So let's get to it. I'm coming into one of my other shops, and I've got my RV parked in here. This is a 27-foot Fun Finder, total solar powered. Watch one of my other videos, and I'll show you how to put solar on it, but I haven't plugged the trailer in probably in a year and a half now. But anyway, I have tandem wheels. So what I'm about to show you is going to be good for bumper pull trailers or fifth wheels. And I got the tandems here. And it has these easy grease axles on it, and I'll show you how to do that. But every 5 or 6 years, I like pulling the wheels off, pull the drums off, and replace the seals and repack the bearings. The axle buddies that you put a grease gun on, do that at the beginning of the season, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay, for those of you that have the greasing axles, and there's axle buddies, there's different names of these things. So what you're going to do is pop off the center cap. And I have it jacked up right now so I can rotate the wheel. This is an important step. You just don't want to pump grease in there with it static. Pop the center greasy cap off, and then you're going to put your grease gun onto the grease cert, and then give it a pump, start the wheel spinning, give it another pump, keep that wheel spinning, have one of your kids keep it moving, or you just do it. Give it some momentum, and then give it a pump. Give it a pump, and I usually do about 4 pumps on it, and that usually works. So beginning of every season, I want to do that. All right, and put your cap back on, and then put the chrome cap, the fancy cap back on. But do that at the beginning of every season, and then every 4 or 5 years, I'm going to pull it off. I'm going to inspect the brakes because there's brake drum in there with brake shoes. Make sure everything's looking good. Maybe clean it, and then I'm going to pull the bearings, replace the wheel seals. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I have jack stands sitting there. I'm going to jack up all the wheels and put them on jack stands. Again, if you don't have the equipment, you just do one wheel at a time, but I'm going to make this like an assembly line and it will go faster. So let me get this thing up in the air. All right, for this next part, you want to glove up it's going to get greasy. Have plenty of paper towels laying around. And again, you can have somebody do this for $400 or $500 and wait to have it done. So to get this center section off, it's like a dust cap holder. What I like doing is taking a rubber mallet and just hitting the outside edge. And you can see it's comes right off. So take and wipe the inside of this bad boy out. Get all that grease out of there. That's probably all contaminated and all dirty. You're going to go through a lot of paper towels. And then get all this grease off of the inside here. And inside here you can see there's my grease cert right there at the tip. Alright, start to see a nut up here. All this grease. And inside here you got a cotter pin. And this is what's called a castle nut. And on the side of the nuts you'll see little grooves. And there's a hole drilled down through the axle. Then a cotter pin will go there and it'll keep that nut from coming loose. So what you're going to do now is take your needle nose pliers, find the end of that cotter pin. And I like buying new ones for 50 cents or whatever. When I got the seals, I just get the new ones. Work it, try to get it as straight as you can. Welcome to RV ownership. So it's nice I can edit this out, all this struggle, and make it look like it just came right out when I do the editing. But I'm not going to do that because that wouldn't be realistic, because they never just come right out. Alright, now you see the nut inside here. Wipe the tools off, try to contain the grease as much as possible here. And then this should not be that tight. You should be able to just loosen this up. There you go. That was actually too loose. And then to spin that castle nut off, you'll see what I mean when you sit it up on the side. It looks like the turret's on a castle. Get another paper towel here. I'll probably go through 2 rolls or so doing this project. And this grease sure is liquidy. I don't know why it's doing that. So there's your castle nut. See, looks like a castle. Put that on there, and then there should be like a washer next, and then here's your outer bearing right there. Just that little guy is holding all the weight, or half the weight of this trailer, bouncing down the road going 70, 80 mile an hour. Pretty amazing. Okay, so let's get this seal out of here. Hopefully you can see that. And you want to get one of these seal removal tools. They're like $5 on eBay. You can get them at any of the auto parts store. So what you're going to do is take that hook that's on here, kind of loop it up underneath there, and give it a good pull. Work it around. And by the power of editing, I want to make this look like it's just going to come right out. Alright, I got the inner seal cleaned out, tons of grease inside there. Remove the outer or the inner bearing, and it's in my bucket. And this is for wheel number 1, number 2, number 3, and 4. I have separate containers. We'll get some mineral spirits down here and clean those bearings out, and then I'll show you how to repack them. Then we put it all back together again. We're done. Here is the bearing greaser that I'm going to be using, and this thing is like a canister, and you're going to fill the bottom with grease about 2/3 of the way up, and then it's like a plunger. Put your bearing inside here, put this plunger on, and then push down, and through the little holes around the side here, it'll actually push the grease up through the bearing. And it says it replaces the old grease, but I like cleaning the bearings first, get all the old grease out, soak the bearings in mineral spirits or gasoline, and get the bearings good and clean so you can inspect them. Make sure there are no heat marks on them or scratches or dings. So anyway, let's fill this up with grease. Another style that's available out there that comes in handy is this cone type device and just unscrew the top. Like so. Set the bearing in there, and you see there's little holes, and there's a grease cert fitting at the top. So what you would do on this is put your grease gun on the top here and then pump down through the rod out into the cone and then up through the bearing. So that's another way. It's a little bit messier. The nice thing about this type is that you could store your grease, just leave it filled up for the next time, and they give you a dust cap that goes on top. So let's fill this thing with some grease. The grease I like using, I like the Valvoline full synthetic. There are other different types. There's red grease and some others out there. But make sure that you see number 2 on the label here. You don't want number 1, you want number 2. And then I like using the full synthetic. So typically the grease comes in a can. It also comes in a tube. Pop this off. Try not to get it all over you. Then you could use a big spoon or a spatula. Take the top part of this out, like so. And use a spoon or whatever you got laying around and just load this thing with grease. This will be the messy part. Yeah, don't ice a cake with this stuff. Looks like icing that my wife gets in a can already made up. It would be nasty on a cake. I got this on Amazon. I'll put a link in the description. But that's about it. So then you want to take and push it down. And then take the plunger, put it on top. And I'll just push it down a little bit until the grease starts coming out the holes. Get all the air out. There you go. So you can see the grease starting to squeeze out those little holes. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. And it's ready to go. So put this on. Also, probably won't be using these, but for bigger bearings too, they give you adapter rings if you need to pack bigger bearings. So wipe the top off. Put the dust cover on and you're good for the next time. All right, looking good here. A couple of the nuts weren't probably torqued down where they should have been. And I didn't show this on the video when I did the passenger side, but one of the seals was gone and it was letting some dirt into the back of the axle. So I'm kind of glad I'm doing this right now. This will hold me for another 8, 9 years, I guess. But old school way is doing it is put a glob of grease and you just take the bearing and wipe it. Just keep going around until it's all clean, all filled up with grease. And these bearings are looking really good, no heat marks, nice and shiny. If you look at your bearings, it'll be pretty obvious if there's a problem. You'll see it. Either the purple on it from heat or any scoring. So that one's done, ready to be repacked. Got the castle nut pretty clean here. And I'm going to lay these all out after I take them out of the bath, and then we'll go ahead and pack them. So let's go ahead and use the bearing packer here. Again, this is made by Gear Wrencher or other brands, but on the bearing you have a small diameter and you have large diameter. You want the small diameter facing down. And this is cone shaped in here, goes in on an angle, and that'll seal around this edge and it'll push the grease up through that cavity and out through the bearings. So just drop it in, put the other cone on top, put your handle, and then what you're going to do is just push it until you start seeing the grease come out. All right, now you're seeing the grease coming up around there, see it bulging, and pretty much done. So let's take it out. And this does a really nice job, but again, doing it in the palm of your hand like I've done for 20 some years works also. But look at all that grease is shot through the bearings and then out the top. So I'll set that one down. That almost messed up. That's number 2. Drop the next one in. Clean this one up really good. Again, you want to get all the grease, all the surface clean and stuff inside there, because you don't know if there's any contaminants in there from water getting in the axle. I know on boat trailers where you're submersing the axle, you definitely want to make sure it's good and clean. I'm looking at all the races. The race is the liner that goes inside the drum, nice and smooth. Bearings look good. And if you're allergic to grease, this is not a good project for you. One thing I want to point out on the axles, so make sure everything is nice and clean, not scored. And up in here, this shoulder back in here, you'll see it is where the seal rides. And you want to make sure that no grit got in there. And if you have an older trailer, you might have a wear mark in there, and then you're going to have to address that. There's different ways of doing that. But really get this good and clean up in here. And then also, if you want to see where this grease cert goes, when you're pumping all that grease, it comes out a little hole. I don't know if you can see that or not. Right there at the tip of my finger. And it just comes out in front of that seal and just floods the whole bearing, the whole center assembly, and then shoots out the front. So that's why there's so much excessive grease when you have this type of axle. Here's the passenger side leading tire, and I'm sure glad I did this. All the other 3 wheels were fine, except this one. You can see where the wheel seal had decayed and was leaking, and you can see the grease shooting out around the back and then working its way around here onto the brake shoe. You see some of it right there. So that's why you do this. And again, I don't use this much every summer, maybe 3,000 miles, something like that, but it's 9 years old. So I'm going to take all this, get it all cleaned up, and use my brake clean and get it all cleaned up. And fortunately, it didn't get onto the shoe on either side, so that's good news. But I'll get this cleaned up, put a new seal in it, and I'm good for another few years. So, but I'm sure glad I did this service on the camper, because that would have led to a bearing failure with contaminants and stuff getting in on the bearing. So the next step is to clean the inside drum, get all the brake dust off. Brake parts cleaner, this is O'Reilly. There's tons of them, NAPA, Advanced Auto. It's a couple dollars a can, but it works really well. So put a paper towel down here. So just give it a good spraying. Get all that brake dust out of there. Make sure the shoes are good and clean. That looks pretty good. And then you want to clean the drum off on the inside too. Make sure you get any grease that was on it off. Spray the inside of the drum, especially the magnetic brake part of this. You can see some of the dirt coming off there, brake dust. So that's good and clean now. And I'll wipe that with another paper towel. Go through a lot of paper towels, get that magnetic surface good and clean. You see all the black coming off of there. All right, so now let's go get the bearing, and then we'll put the seal in. So we'll drop the inner bearing in to the race after I put a little bit of grease down in there. Put some grease down on that race. Make sure it's well lubricated. And then I'm going to grease the outer seal where the seal's going to go along that shaft I showed you, that little shoulder in the back there. I want to get some good grease all over this. Alright, so drop the bearing in. Make sure it's straight. And then here's the seal. I like putting a little bit of grease around the outside edge. Helps it seat a little bit better. And then definitely you want to put some grease on the inside of that seal so when it goes onto that shoulder, it's going to make a nice smooth fit. So grease that up good. Put the seal in like so. And I have a race setter, I guess they call it, for pounding in seals and putting races in. We'll see if that's the size I need. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So you can get these on eBay. Comes with a different assortment. So if you have to pound a race down into the rotor or the drum, so pretty much you just take this guy, thread the bolt out, put them on the end there for whatever size you need, and then just loosely tighten that back up again. And I need to go get my hammer. Okay, I'm on top of the seal. Just kind of, the idea is you want to go straight down with this. Okay. And then it should go flush, and that's pretty much it. A little bit of grease on that seal again before it goes in. I got my inner bearing in there. Looks good. And let's put it back on again. You want to be careful with that bearing and the seal. Try to line it up with the shoes. Get it on there, spin it a little bit. And there it is. Put a little more grease in there. Here's my front bearing. I have my thrust washer. Make sure to absolutely definitely put that on. And then my castle nut. And I like spinning a little bit as I tighten it down by hand. The last thing we need to do is put the torque down the castle nut onto wheel bearings, and then put in the, you can see that, the cotter pins back in, which is a little bit tricky because you have to line up the notches in the castle nut in the hole in the axle. But anyway, let's give this a shot. So what I like doing is just taking a wrench. Again, you don't want a ton of pressure on these as you go. And that's about it. So now I got to find the hole, which is always a challenge. And then run the cotter pin down through the hole, the axle, bend the tips over, and that's pretty much it. On in, and then I want to take the end of the cotter pin, and you'll see one of the legs is longer than the other, so I like grabbing that first one and get a hold of it, and bending that up first. And you kind of want to wrap it around and make sure it's not interfering with the dust cap, and then take the other leg and bend it. Castle nut's on, cotter pin is in, bent over, everything's set to go. And then the last step is to pump grease down to the cert. Also, make sure your certs are tight. I've been doing these for many, many years, and occasionally I'll find one that's loose, ready to fall out. And if it does fall out, you got to take the wheel off, take the dust cap, and get at it. But anyway, it's a 5/16 inch wrench. Just give it a little test on all of your certs, your grease certs. So I'm going to put grease gun on here, and I'm going to pump this. Make sure that you're using the same grease in your grease gun as you pack the bearings with too. That's critical. But I'm going to keep pumping and filling up the cavity there, pushing through all the little orifices until I see the grease starting to come out the front edge of that thrust bearing right behind the castle nut. Okay, seeing the grease come out right around the edge. So now I know that it is full. And get the dust cap, grease cap, put it back on, give it a couple more spins. You can see the grease starting to ooze out the end there. Put the grease cap on, make sure the center plug is in, and that's going to finish up this wheel. A little wipe around the edge in case anything oozed out. And I'm ready to go for another 7-8 years probably. Let's go ahead and wrap it up for the night, and thanks for watching.